Hello, I'm Felicity Cohen. I'm so excited to introduce you to my Wellness Warriors podcast. For over 20 years, I've been a passionate advocate for helping thousands of Australians find solutions to treating obesity and health-related complications through surgical intervention and holistic managed care. My podcast is dedicated to all the people, past, present and future, who have helped shape my journey and continue to inspire me to work consistently to achieve a healthier Australia in both adults and future generations. I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to my Wellness Warriors podcast. Today I have the absolute pleasure of introducing you to Pat Mesiti, who is a prosperity activist. What an incredible title. I'm very excited because this is something really new for me on the Wellness Warriors podcast and a completely different new conversation. I grew up myself with a family of accountants and they were all kind of connected to world of finance. My father was president of the Australian Society of Accountants for many years and worked in a public company as a finance director. And brother who's also been involved in that sector, and I'm absolutely hopeless. I think I am.
I think you're doing quite well. Felicity. It's great to be here, and absolutely amazing what you're doing in the lives of people, and because prosperity affects all areas of life, not just money, but their health, their inner world, their outer world, their mental health. And so thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, and I think there's a lot of crossover and cross-pollination between some of the messages that I'm sharing with patients on a daily basis and what you're sharing with your clients also.
Yeah. A lot of it's to do with mindset. People, like in Australia and the Western world, we're not taught to think prosperity. We're taught to think handout, bottom of the pile, who can support me. We're not taught to be self-sufficient and self-reliant. And that's one of the things that I'm advocating to people, is that every one of you listening to this has a recipe. You have knowledge, you have information that you could help others with. I mean, hear what you're doing with wellness. It's information that's helping people get better. And why shouldn't you be financially rewarded by that and for that? And Dr. John Demartini, a good friend of mine, said, those of us that are solving the biggest pains of humanity, whether it's physical, emotional, spiritual, we should be the most highly rewarded. And I tend to agree with that. So congratulations for what you're doing, Felicity.
Thank you so much. I want to start with a quote that I read on your Instagram page this morning that really resonated with me. And that is that generosity breeds abundance. And if you want to try and encourage others, or you're looking for financial abundance, then you need to give it abundantly.
Correct.
And I actually really loved that quote on your page.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask you a little bit more about that kind of thought process first of all.
If you give, you get. It's the law of reciprocity. That's a big word from a boy from Bankstown. It's the law of sowing and reaping.
Yeah.
A farmer gives into the earth and reaps a harvest. It's a universal law. Back the ancients used to call it seed time and harvest. And something has to leave from your hand to return back into your life. And you see that with people that are generous and they give. They're the most happiest people. Over the years, and I've been speaking now 43 years, and I've traveled to some of the most impoverished countries where people are giving and they're doing things. I went to the Philippines and they bought me a thing called balut, which was, I couldn't eat it, but the villagers went and bought that, and you could see there was a joy in giving. But the other side of it is that when we give, we open up we open up heaven over us, and I believe it's a material thing, it's a spiritual thing, but it's also something that builds us up on the inside. I've never met a happy, stingy person yet. And I would encourage people, whatever you want in life, give it away. You want love, give it away. You want peace, give it away. You want money, give it away. And it will come back to you. And many people go, I can't afford to give. I can't afford not to give. And as I teach my students, you don't want to be living on what you're earning. You want to be living on what you're giving. And there's an interesting story, Felicity, if I may share just one little story.
Absolutely.
Of a little boy sitting downstairs at an apartment, and this guy drives up in this brand new red Ferrari, And little boy goes, wow, you must be so rich. And the guy's got his jewellery and his suit. He goes, look, I'm not rich. My brother is rich. He said, my brother bought me this Ferrari and all these clothes for my 60th birthday. And little boy looks at him and goes, I wish I could be a brother like that.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
But that's the power. The power isn't in you getting. The power is in the capacity to be able to do that. So that's how I view my worldview in that perspective.
I'm totally on the same page as you, and I love that, and I think it's a really beautiful...
You can steal it.
it's a beautiful message, but I feel that's the way I live.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really nice to read that quote from you and how that equates to wealth abundance.
Yeah.
Because it's not something that I'd thought about in those terms.
And people, I say to people, look, you'll never possess what you're unwilling to pursue. And there's a sense of being content with what you have while pursuing what you want. And people fall in love with the end result. Like here with what you've got going, they want to be fit and they want to be healthy and they want to lose weight. And they fall in love with the golden pot at the end of the rainbow. I encourage people, if you fall in love with the process, the result's guaranteed. But if you fall in love with the end result, and I'm not talking about vision casting or anything like that, fall in love with the process. I mean, we were talking before off camera, I know what I've got to do to, get myself down my 7 kgs. And you said, Pat, did you run this morning? And I went, the process, but the process. And it's the same with creating wealth. I was asked on a television show, Pat, how do you get rich quick? I said, slowly. Because I don't believe in get rich quick schemes. I don't believe they work. I believe they're totally unsustainable. And when people get rich quick, what happens is their income level generally shrinks to the level of their mindset. You look at Mike Tyson, $400 million in boxing, ended up broke. So many people that win these huge pots of gold. Andrew J. Whitaker, $318 million and lost it in 3 years. What happened? The money shrunk to the level of their thinking. Your income, your business, your life, your health, your relationships. Our future prosperity is in the confines of our mind. And our mind either builds us a prison or a palace. It just depends what material you use. And if I can encourage everyone to work on their mindset, there's every 60 seconds someone becomes a millionaire. Why not you? And if not, why not? Stop disqualifying yourself. Stop trivializing yourself. Stop comparing yourself. If you want to be miserable, just compare yourself to other people, And I think these are vital keys to creating wealth and prosperity in all aspects of life.
I'm fascinated to learn a little bit about your background and how you actually got into this space and what led you here. Okay. So you're a boy from Bankstown?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was raised by 2 alcoholic parents, and I didn't do too well at school. I was kicked out of school in year 10 and then went to another school with the same Catholic colleges. My journey became really real to me when I became a person of faith, and I don't shove that down anyone's throat. And I ended up being a youth leader and was trying to raise money for this youth program that we had. And we grew from 100, 120 to over 12 to 15,000 young people at rallies, and I had no money. And I decided to just study prosperity, and of course that opened up doors for me to speak in the corporate world, because in the church world, I mean, unless you're one of the mega preachers, then you get paid well. We'll leave that one alone. But I was working with young people, and then I started I took over a drug rehabilitation centre called Teen Challenge. It was $276,000 in debt, losing $27,000 a month with 4 boys in the program. And when I took over the facility, when the boys had a choice between prison and that facility, they chose prison. That's bad. And they were running the facility the way they were running their finances. Now, I'm not an accountant. Every time I hear the word budget, I feel like I'm getting a wedgie, so which maybe your family don't want to hear that. But to me, I started applying principles, and I cleared that debt in 3 months. And I, went through a terrible divorce in 2001 through my own stupidity. And that caused a lot of trauma, a lot of mental health challenges. So I had to rebuild again, and I just applied what I knew, because many of us discount what we know, And I knew, okay, well, I've got to be careful of who I'm hanging around with. I've got to be careful what input comes into my eyes and my ears. I've got to be careful what comes out of my mouth. And I want to tell everyone out there, everyone has had failure in their life. I don't care who you are. You've all had failures. And I say to people, I've got no rocks to throw at anyone. And I'm here to tell you that your failures don't need to be fatal. And your mistakes are not a permanent condition. You are not a mistake. You are a human being. And my encouragement is pick yourself up wherever you're from and build on what you know. So
you've absolutely led me into the question that I was just had on the tip of my tongue that I was going to ask you next about how you feel about failure, because so many people who work in a similar space as you talk about how our failures also shape our success.
Yeah.
A lot of people, when they're in that space and before they get to that point of recovering from failure, they find it hard to see that failure is real. It is important, and I think for me personally as well, if you haven't been there, you don't actually get that is part of it's part of loving the process.
Exactly.
It's part of the journey, and it is, I believe, part of that journey to success.
Failure doesn't have to be fatal if you own your stuff. And, I owned my stuff, and I went and got help for my stuff, my issues. Most people go for help far too late, whether it's weight, mindset, money, relationships. I should have gone for help before. And, if your marriage is in trouble, go and get some help, You're not responsible for what the other person does or doesn't do. You're responsible for what you do. And then, of course, I was falsely accused of stuff, in 2015, which was thrown out of court. But the media, especially if you're a personality, they love to create stories and the narratives. And we know that media, they lie. If there was I'll use you as an illustration. If there was a sandwich board out there that said, Felicity gives $1 million to kids, right, on a sandwich board. And then another one, Felicity caught with 3 hunks in a bedroom. Which one do you think people are going to read?
Yeah, 100%.
And what's going to sell the papers?
The scandal. Why? What is it about human nature that takes us to that?
Because that's that bottom mentality that people want. And that's what's built empires. It's like the Rolling Stones once said, and they call them the bad boys. He said, well, you don't hear about the good kids all that much. And see, failure, a couple of things on how to handle failure. Number 1, own it. Number 2, get help. Number 3, make sure that you don't internalize it. And if you're going to fail forward. Every failure has a disappointment. If all you take out of that is disappointment, you're really going to be a depleted individual. So what can I learn from this failure? And the next thing is, here's what I tell people. Look, best way to learn is through other people's mistakes. Hardest way to learn is through your mistakes. But the insane thing is some people never learn from either of those two. And if you've made mistakes, you've made errors in your life, own it. And don't worry about the trolls and the nitpicking, thumb-sucking whingers. They're going to be there anyway. And I say to people, Felicity, you may want to use this. My friends don't need an explanation, and my enemies aren't going to believe me anyway. Yeah. Why am I going to spend my life explaining myself to people who are hell-bent on my demise? You've got to be your own champion. You've got to be your own master to your life. I'm sorry, I give long answers to short questions.
Oh, I'm loving it. It's fabulous. There's so many pearls of wisdom in there. So I really appreciate you sharing all of this. And I think for anyone who's watching this or listening to the Wellness Warriors podcast, there are so many takeaways already, and we've only just got started. Yeah. So I'm absolutely loving listening to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do you think that there's been, in terms of your mindset and shift in terms of what you're teaching your students, what have you seen that's changed about what you're impressing on people over the last 12, 18 months?
Look, there's a lot of fear out there at the moment. And fear is a disempowering, forgive me if I use this strong language, demonic entity. It's an evil thing. Yeah. And it can cause you to be depleted, disempowered, give up, throw hands. Or it could drive you. When COVID hit, I had hundreds of thousands of dollars invested in events, flights, and it just got wiped off the planet. And I got so discouraged. I went through a walk the Gold Coast. I saw the buildings where I have my meetings empty. And we quickly swung our business into an online model. Well, our business grew by 40%. And what I want to tell people is this. You all have information inside of you. This is an information age, whether it be wellness, spirituality, feng shui, law, accountancy. This is a great time where crisis can meet unbelievable opportunity. And if you get the right knowledge, I mean, every month we do webinars and seminars to people. One, I teach how to monetize your knowledge. Two, people want to learn how they can invest in this new economy and get information and then apply it. Don't let these things disempower you. I said to my daughter, she's a teenager and in lockdown Sydney, and I said, all right, sweetheart, what you need to do is don't worry about just do your schoolwork, but in all this time now, go and find a course, beauty or eyelashes or whatever. And she's into it right now, you know. Now once she gets that skill, we're going to market it, we're going to promote it. It's a great time for people to flip the narrative in our heads. I hope that answers the question.
Oh, absolutely. And I hear often people talking, using the word pivot. And I definitely think that, having that space, that time to focus on innovation, I think that we can be more innovative than ever before because we've been thrown into that crisis point in time.
Correct.
Where for many businesses that's been a need.
Correct.
And if you don't, that's when things are going to get difficult. And I think, coming back to some of your earlier responses, if you focus on the disappointment, then maybe you're not going to have the energy or the foresight to focus on what could be.
Correct.
If you innovate.
Well, one of my students, Rachel Withers, I'll give you two students.
Yeah.
They're both in the UK, Rachel and Paul. Paul won't even let me use his surname, he's so introverted. But Paul is a sign writer. Actually, I'll give you three stories. Paul's a sign writer. And he said, well, how am I going to, how can I monetize this? I said, get online, it's a great niche. It's a niche that is an inch wide and a mile deep. Well, he launched, using our system, £75,000 in his first webinar. Rachel Withers, another young lady, she launched a business called Fitpreneur. And it's like ballet fitness. And I mean, I don't know, that leaves me cold. I mean, can you imagine me in a tutu for a start? Yeah, but don't do that. Don't do that. Please don't do that. I'm sorry for hurting people's mind. But she's seven figures. And the other one is a lady that I'm featuring in October. Her name is Elizabeth Hughes. She was a single mum. She lost her job during COVID because she was an event coordinator and went home crying. Got an email off a database that we were on, joined our 30K in 30-day challenge. And the concept was, if we can't help you make $30,000 in 30 days, we'll give you the $30,000. So we taught people for 30 days. Well, last week we chose one person randomly out. We chose her. She'd never spoken online before, never had a webinar before. All she had was a little e-commerce idea. Well, her first webinar, 128,000. Her second one generated another 180,000. She would have done probably about $700,000 to $800,000 in the last 12 months.
Wow.
All because she had a little idea in her head. And she didn't think, but people want to know, well, how do I turn myself into an e-commerce business from home? And her story, I'm featuring her in October, amazing. And none of these people are great speakers. They've just got information. And I want to encourage everyone out there, you are a cash-making machine. You are asset-rich with knowledge. Use it. Don't stick it under a carpet somewhere, and yeah.
Self-belief and having a positive mindset is everything.
Correct.
Yeah.
And thinking, like, we're not taught to think like millionaires, Felicity, in Australia and New Zealand. Come on, Australia, we want everybody to rise to the middle. And what are we going to do if you're successful? We're going to tear you down. We're going to tear you down. That we're not teaching people, how do you prosper? How do you create a prosperous mentality? How do you create life that is one of abundance and one of giving? We're not taught that. In our culture, sadly, in Australia, we're like, just take, or the government will look after you. The pension is below the poverty line. And they have no capacity to be able to do that. We need to encourage free thinking in all areas of life, but particularly in the area of creating wealth. Because What worked yesterday is not going to work today. Look, I'm 62 years of age this year. I've been speaking now for 44 years. I have never seen such drastic, violent, quick, oppressive change so quickly in my entire life on this planet in a short period of time. And it's getting worse. Mm-hmm. So we can either cower under that or we can rise up. And I can assure you, if you cower, you're going to hurt yourself financially. But if you rise up and use what you know, you can actually create financial freedom for yourself.
I want to share with you something that I learnt working with bariatric or weight loss surgical patients when I'd been working in this industry for about 10 years. And it took me 10 years to learn the correlation between achieving greater health and well-being to financial health and well-being. And that happened one day when a patient came to see me, and this particular lady, she was well over 200 kilos before she had surgery. Her parents came with her to an information session and they were worried that she was not going to survive. She had surgery, she is living the dream. I still keep in touch with this particular lady, and this is going back to 2004 when I met her. A few years later, she came back to see me and she told me that she had completely changed her financial situation.
Wow.
That she was, because of her self-confidence, her self-esteem, her self-confidence, she'd changed her investment strategy. Everything about her financial health and well-being had grown exponentially alongside her health and well-being.
Wow.
And that's when I learnt that there's a massive correlation.
Oh, huge correlation.
And interestingly enough, so many people, when they look at the investment for weight loss and their health, they're so worried about investing and making that financial commitment, when typically they're going to totally change the trajectory of their health, but also their financial health.
Yeah.
It's a really fascinating story.
Yeah, it's an incredible story. Because, how we do some things is how we do all things. For me as a presenter, I want to keep working on my craft. How do I get better? I've been speaking, as I said, now 43, 44 years. I still get nervous every time I click on that webinar, and people go, why have you been doing it 44 years? Because I don't want to disappoint. I want to get better at what I do. And all of us inside of ourselves, if we could just flick that switch and be on, and be aware. This lady, obviously, the weight loss affected her income. Once she flipped that, magic happens.
Unbelievable. And it's happened to so many others too. They tell me with self-confidence, they go after other jobs, they go after the promotions.
Yeah,
so it's fascinating to see those changes in people. And I love that because I think it's just so powerful.
Yeah. Dr. Bob Proctor, who's an outstanding, he just did a webinar for me a few weeks ago. It just gave me the hugest endorsement. I mean, I could not believe. But he talks about, everything starts up here. Everything you see, everything in this room, that camera, that light, those clothes, that picture, everything came out of someone's mind.
Yeah.
And so often people don't realise that their mind is their greatest asset, and it's got nothing to do with education, nothing at all. Because I flunked maths at school, but I've written 10 bestsellers. English is my second language. My parents were from Calabria. My writing looks like chicken scratch, I still don't know how to use a computer. I barely know how to copy and paste. But I say to people, I never let my education get in the way of my income. And if people could just remove that and realise of the magnificence inside of them, the gold that's inside of them, we're going to mine that, just like you've got to mine for diamonds. And those diamonds are found in dark places. They're not found, and I want to encourage people to use what you know and help other people and be rewarded financially.
Amazing. You've written 10 books. Tell me, how did you start the first book for someone who felt like, you maybe, did you have, what inspired you? What was it that made you actually write your very first one?
I'll tell you what inspired me, to be honest with you. I heard about a friend of mine who was speaking, and in those days he was speaking for Amway. And he was selling these books by the thousands. I thought, he's selling these books by the thousands. I could, thousands of people to rock up in my meeting. I didn't have a book. So I dictaphoned my first book, Wake Up and Dream. Because for me to write, I'm not that good. and my mind thinks far too fast, you know. So I dictaphoned it. It took me 18 months. And then I had people come in and help me with editing and whatever. And then my next one, I wrote it in 4 months. And then my next one, now I can write a book in a matter of weeks, you know. My wife's encouraging me to write another one on finances, but we're so flat out with what we're doing on webinars and Zoom calls. But the process is, here's what I say to people. If you want to write a book, start like this. In the beginning. Hey, it was a great start for God, you know. In the beginning, there was the heavens and the earth.
Wow.
That's right. Or once upon a time. Just start. And don't worry about getting it right, because you can move things around. Just start. A book is written one sentence at a time, one word at a time, one paragraph at a time. Don't go to the conclusion. And I say to people this, and sometimes people get offended by this statement. I say, look, God sent his son, but he left his book. That should tell you something about how important books are. All of the greats have written books, and no one ever thought of themselves as great writers. See, you can be a great writer, forget that. You want to be a bestseller. And bestsellers don't necessarily mean the best written. You look at Robert Kiyosaki's books, they are not the best written books, but they appeal. Mm-hmm. They touch a human need. And if you're going to write a book, do it one letter at a time, one word at a time, one paragraph at a time. Number two, speak to human need. If you deal with human need, you'll always be needed. So I write books that appeal to human need. What do people need right now? Is it weight loss? Is it how to raise kids? Is it how to raise your grandkids? How to, have your own organic vegetable garden? All of these things are niches that sell. And that's what I would encourage people to do. Get out there, write your books, contact us. We're happy to help you. I'm not a publisher, but we certainly do help people put legs on what they know. In the last 3 or 4 years, I've had 39 of my students go bestseller.
That's
from
phenomenal.
A standing start. 39. And I say to people, you don't want to write a book to make money. Forget it. Unless you're J.K. Rowling's or, Jeffrey Archer, or Kiyosaki or something like that, forget it. Look, you got to use that for your branding. Your book is the best business card you'll ever have. You're positioning yourself as an expert. Well, I don't feel like an expert. No one who's an expert feels like an expert. You're positioning yourself, mm-hmm. and it gives you an automatic leg up of authority. If someone gives you a business card and someone gives you a book, which one's most impressive?
Oh, I'm going to go for the book every single time.
Every single time.
Yeah.
And they can lose a business card, but highly unlikely they're going to lose that book.
And I love audiobooks now too as well. So
my latest book called Unbreakable, I went to the studio and did audio, and I was like, it took me so long to get it right, because sometimes I say, everything rather than everything, and my wife's always going, you need to stop, it's G, not K. I go, I'm still a Bankstown boy, so we did that, and audiobooks are great.
Fabulous.
And people go, I don't like the sound of my voice. Get a voiceover person.
Oh, I'd much rather hear the author read it themselves.
Of
So I love
course.
that you've done that yourself.
Yeah.
Tell us about Unbreakable. What's it about?
It was about the pivoting that we had to do
mm-hmm.
over our over this time. And if people want it, look, I'll send you a link. You can give it away as a freebie to all your customers and clients. It's my give.
Thank you.
So we wrote it about the how to capitalize on the oncoming biggest transfer of wealth online. And if you're not online, you're going to be off track. But you don't want to be online and off track. So it's getting back together. So Unbreakable is about a mindset, and then about how to establish yourself in the online business niche. That's the core of it, really.
You've obviously had a very strong connection with youth, from your role in Bankstown as a father.
Yeah.
What do you think are some of the most significant challenges that youth are facing now, and how do they perceive that whole big question around creating wealth for themselves in the future?
Are we talking in wealth or life or both?
Both.
Okay.
Both. Prosperity in general.
I'm glad you're asking this, Felicity, because this has been weighing on my heart for the last 48 hours. Our young people today are so fearful. They're scared to go for a walk. They're scared. Melbourne, Victoria, suicide rate's gone up 184% in the last 12 months. The sexual abuse hotlines are ringing off the Richter scale. And this is not political, this is fact. There's an 80%, a 40 to 80% increase right now. They are feeling completely overwhelmed. Secondly, they're not trusting a lot right now. Because contrary to popular belief, young people research. They can go to TikTok, they can go to Instagram, and they are the most researched generation in history because of social media, online, YouTube, you name it. There is a feeling of overwhelm, a feeling of depression out there. And unlike, say, the baby boomers who were like, right, we're going to rally together and they're feeling disempowered. And my advice to any parent out there is, as much as you can, fill them with hope. Help them create a vision for where they're going. Look, take them out to nice places and see nice things. Oh, Pat, that's giving false hope. No, it's not. It's creating a picture in their mind, of what they can do and what they can achieve, because they are very creative. Young people are very, you look at it, they got out there, they got their selfies and you go, how did you do that? And they got words and they got all kinds of stuff. I have no clue how to do that. They are creative. I have my grandchildren. When I have problems with my television or my computer, I call my 10-year-old grandson and he knows exactly what to do. So that they're already in tune in that way. So if we can encourage them to start building maybe an online business, moving products and teaching them to become financially independent within the culture in which they live in.
Yeah.
And rather than becoming victims of the culture, they become responders to the culture and they attack it. It's like Picasso said, they asked him once, what do you do with a canvas? He says, I attack the canvas. And teach them to not go on the back foot. Teach them to be free thinkers. Teach them to follow their own narrative, not what they're dished out. And the world is always afraid of free thinkers, but the world's always been empowered and liberated and energized by free thinkers. And encourage them to do that. And look, I hope that answers the question, but because I am concerned for our youth. I'm concerned about things like our terminology, party drugs, recreational drugs. Stop that language.
There's been some stories recently, not just about mental health and obviously the equation with suicide rates increasing, but also students being caught with actually taking drugs while they've been on online classes.
Online classes, absolutely. And it's more prevalent. And of course, today, parents say, well, when I was your age, can I just assure every parent, listen to me, I'm going to look in that camera, you were never their age. You lived in a completely different world. Our dynamic was a fax machine, So these
true.
Kids, at the click of a button, have an entire universe open to them that's not even filtered. And I want to encourage parents you have a right to monitor what your child is watching. You have a right to inquire, and as much as you can, and to steer them in the right direction. Young people today need a compass. Our compass today is like a spinning clock. And again, I'm not here to be a moral policeman or anything like that. We have got what I would call a moral vacuum. There's no compasses in life. We have an ethics system which is movable. There's no north. And so kids go, well, I'll give you an example. I was at a high school assembly and the young man stood up and he was so angry. I said to him, son, why are you so angry? He says, why won't anybody tell me what's right and wrong anymore?
Wow.
He was angry. He said, I want to know. And therein lies the problem. People don't know what they believe anymore. And so how can we pass it on to our kids? My encouragement to parents is have some absolutes in your life. Have some traditions in your life. It may be like Sunday afternoon is pasta day. We have pasta every Sunday. Sunday afternoon is roast lunch. Create those traditions. Give them a north. Give them things that they can go, yeah, I can build on that. Like for me, all my daughters, they love cooking. My mum never taught me how to cook. I just watched. You know, I love cooking. They love cooking. These are traditions that we can pass down to our children, and it helps them stay connected to us and disconnected with what's going on out there in the world today.
Really great advice, and I think it's so important for us at a stage of life where we can empower our youth as well. It's something that I think has to be part
Correct.
of how what we're doing every day needs to be connected to how we're supporting future generations. I think it's so important. No matter what we do now, we need to be empowering generations of the future.
100%, and again, steering them north, help them find their north, and that to a child can be so different. My father, when I was a kid, used to go, when you get the bigger, you're going to be a doctor. So I just never got bigger. You know? I stayed at 5'3". But I don't want to be a doctor. I had no intention of being a doctor. Well, you can go be a lawyer. And with what my family was involved in, they needed some good lawyers. I don't want to be a lawyer. But obviously my father saw something there that, you know, that was different. And he was right. It's just that I didn't want to go in that direction. I was too much of a free thinker. I never named my kids after my parents, as most Italians, Greeks and Lebanese do. I went against my cultural, religious, traditional beliefs, and I was incredibly stubborn and a fighter. And I think that's kind of stood me well in life, that stubbornness and the fighter, and as well as that free thinker, because I really believe we need to help our kids think. And I believe that very passionately. Yeah. And our education system is not helping them think. It's helping them become robots. And I want to challenge every parent out there. Teach your kids not what to think, how to think. Two very different things.
100%.
Teach them how to think.
Amazing. Teaching children to think, but also teaching young, all of our youth to think more for themselves, use these moments in life to be empowered.
Absolutely.
And giving them the mental fitness and the capacity to still remain as free thinkers, and to focus on what they can achieve in life.
See, parents go, well, life will teach them. That's a very slow and cruel teacher. Give them the tools they need now to think about prosperity, about abundance, about entrepreneurs. Look, I'll tell you something about kids. I used to do these parenting seminars, and I'd have the parents on one side, the teens on the other, and I'd say, all right, I'm going to ask you a question. Parents, what is it, the number one thing that you think kids want? And parents will yell out. I'll go, yell out. They go, love. I say, kids, money. Huh?
Yeah.
Parents, what do you think they need? They'd say blah blah blah, responsibility. They'd say freedom. It's okay, all right. And merging those two was something we would do, and I'd have the kids debate with the parents on what they really thought. You say I want love, or Dad, you're worried that you work 8-10 hours a day and I don't see you. They don't care. Let me tell you what they care. Just don't come home in a bad mood.
Yeah.
Just don't give me leftovers. So when you come home, Dad, Mum, I don't mind you working 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day. Just don't come home in a bad mood, and don't pick on me, and don't take it out on me.
Great advice. I love that. That's
Thanks,
a
Melissa.
beautiful pearl. You mentioned earlier a little bit about being a man of faith, and that was something that obviously there was a moment there in life when you became involved back in Bankstown.
Yeah.
Do you think that faith in general, is that something that is lacking? How do we find that piece of the puzzle to give back to children so that they do have, and youth, so that they do have more?
Yeah. Look, mine was spiritual faith, and then there's also faith in general that we need to have. And I don't think that those two are two separate issues. Mine was, I was brought up in a religious system. It didn't work for me. But when I had my own choice, to me, I was a pretty hard nut, and I was tough. I tell you, I was tough, and no shrink was going to change me. No, it was a divine encounter that changed my life, to which I still feel it today. Even when I talk about it, I still feel that as powerfully today as I did when I was 15, 16 years of age. Because I know what I was like, and I know, and it's like you, Felicity, no one with a theory can take away your experience.
Yep.
And so that's what I found, and then of course I had to build on that. That was the moment, but then there was the process. and faith is a moment, and then it involves a process. Because there's things out there that can steal your faith, and you get disillusioned, and you know you throw in the towel. Look, two of my greatest friends, two great examples of amazing faith, Danny and Layla Abdullah. Beautiful couple. Last year, drunk driver killed their 3 children in Sydney, and their niece as well. It was all over the news, and she got up and said that she forgave the man that did that to them. Touched a nation. And they started I Forgive Day. That's faith. And I'm here to tell people, I'm not asking you to believe what I believe, but whatever you believe, just believe it.
Amazing. I love that you've had so many years of opportunity to empower and to help so many people, inspire them and create their own opportunities through everything that you do. So thanks you for everything that you share. I think it's incredible, and I'm looking forward to learning more myself.
Thank you.
It's been fabulous talking to you. I think I could sit and ask you a billion questions.
Let's do it again another time.
I'd love to, but I'm going to finish with one question. And this is something that I love to ask everybody on the podcast who comes onto my Wellness Warriors podcast.
Yep.
What does wellness mean to you?
Oh. Wellness to me means wholeness in my soul first, wholeness in my mind, wholeness in my body, although right now my little temple's looking a bit like a tabernacle, and wholeness in my relationship, because I think they all work together. If my body is fit and healthy, but my relationships are depleted, really, if I've got a great relationship, if my body's depleted, sick, it's that holistic approach, and that's what it means to me. And thank you for helping people find that zone.
Thank you for saying that. It's been a pleasure having you here today, and I'm really looking forward to the next opportunity. Please thank Pat Mesiti, and I can't wait to actually also give away that opportunity for our podcast readers, listeners to tap into your book too. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Absolutely, and we'll probably give them the audio version as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for joining the Wellness Warriors podcast. It's been a pleasure to have you online with us. If you enjoyed the series, please leave your review, subscribe and follow, and we look forward to sharing many more stories with you in the future.